Preparing to stream.
I think live streaming.
Preparing to stream. There you go.
I think live streaming.
Preparing to stream. There you go. I haven't quite got the hang of this yet. Okay, I'm back on
Live streaming.
There you go. I haven't quite got the hang of this.
Are you all still getting feedback from me? Sorry.
We were, not now.
Okay. In that case, I think I have it sussed. I'm sorry if I'm quiet because Alistair says I'm very quiet on this machine, but if I don't have the right microphones switched on and the right speakers switched on, it instantly feeds back. So if everyone can hear okay, then I believe we are live on YouTube, and it should be working. So over to Alistair as our chair.
Okay, well, thanks, Alexa, and good evening, everyone, and welcome to this Resources Committee meeting. It's the first meeting we've had since 20th of August, and we've got a pretty full agenda. Do we have any apologies for absence? Item 1?
From Graham.
Okay, thank you. The minutes of the last meeting, I'll just, you should all have had it, but I'll just walk through it sort of quickly. Under item 6, we made reference to a serious deficit in income on town hall lettings, which I think was fairly self-explanatory. In item 7, the clerk advised us that devolved services were continuing and that safety and service inspections had all continued without interruption. At that time, we were also working on a pitch maintenance program. Football was actually restarting in August, but the public toilets in Windsor End were still out of use. We then moved on and talked a little bit about the situation with regard to telecommunication masts, both at the rugby club and at Woburn Green Lane sports field. We noted the fact that the lease in respect of the Butterfly Reserve land was due to expire soon, and that the clerk is engaged in an action to renew that lease. As far as occupancy of the town hall was concerned at that time, it was pretty mixed. Some companies who were able to continue were coming in, and others were not, simply by virtue of the activities that they were involved with. We weren't involved in any public hire activity for obvious reasons associated with movement of people in and out of the building. And of course, all of those things would have a negative impact on income for the current year. Under item 9, we made reference to the fact that the rent review of the town hall is still ongoing and has not reached a conclusion. We also noted the fact that the town hall roof was leaking quite seriously, and we were just about to embark on a repair program. There was an application, 2 applications, in fact, for certificates of lawfulness, which were commented upon in item 10. And in item 11, there was quite a major discussion about whether or not at some point in the future, when it was safe to do so, we would consider reintroducing the community bus trial. And I think finally, there was a request for expenditure from the Beaconsfield Society, which later on went before the Town Council. So that was the précis of the minutes of the last meeting. Does anybody have any comments with regard to those minutes? Yes, Patrick, you're muted.
Yeah, just a quick comment, and that was the minutes. It says the meeting was on Zoom, but it doesn't actually say what time it was. I think we normally say when the meeting was, and also it doesn't say in the minutes who the chairman is, which it usually says. The other thing, there seems to be a bit of confusion between items 11, 12 and 13, in that there's at the beginning of section 12, it looks like that relates to section 13, because it's talking about the bus, and then it rambles on about having to go to full council, but the resources committee is well placed. I think that all relates, I believe, to section 13. Which was the request for expenditure.
Okay, if I just answer that, I mean, I think as I read it, items 11 and 12 were actually all about the community bus, and 13 was about requests for expenditure, which was separate.
Well, yes, but we did actually discuss the fact that the request for expenditure that was under discussion should have gone to full council, as indeed it did. I don't remember, and the clerk may correct me, but I don't remember the clerk saying that the community bus should go to full council instead of having come to resources. I'm not sure about that. But I would commend the clerk on one thing on the agenda for this meeting, is that she has actually shown requests for expenditure, which I think would normally be interpreted as requests from other parts of the council, i.e. other committees, from grant applications, which of course would generally be, would be external. And I think it's important that the council differentiates between its own expenditure requirements and those of outside organisations.
Okay, we'll come on to that, obviously as part of this evening's agenda. I think with regard to your earlier comment, you said something about the time of the meeting on the 20th of August. It does, in fact, show that was at 6 o'clock.
Ah, does it? I thought it just said on Zoom.
No, well, if further down, underneath, before the minutes itself, it talks about the officers of the council and against.
Oh yes, meeting commenced at 6 p.m. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yes, because the time the meeting commenced isn't necessarily the time the meeting was called. Of course, that's just a technicality there.
Right. Okay. Town clerk.
Where would I be without this assistance? Wonderful. What I wanted to say is just on the community bus, whether it was referred to the full council or not, it is such an important matter. It would automatically have to go to full council. So, and it's outside, whatever it is, will be outside the spending limit of any one committee. Therefore, it will, at the right time, if we can get the reports and everything together for, because they did ask, you did ask in this last committee for enhanced financial reports regarding that. It's quite a big decision for the council. It has to go to full council. I just wanted to make that point. And generally the minutes are not verbatim. The only requirement of the minutes is to record decisions.
Yeah, just the request for expenditure was, of course, also had to be referred to full council, and that isn't minuted. So I just thought that should be clarified.
Okay.
Okay. Right. So anybody else got any other comments? Okay, let's move on then to item 4, which is matters arising. Are there any other matters arising other than what we will deal with under today's agenda? Okay. Item 5, declarations of interest. I will declare that I'm a member of the Beaconsfield Society. Anyone else? Any other declaration? Okay. Now, we had hoped to put in front of you the final statements for the year ended 31st of March, having given you the draft numbers back in August. Unfortunately, those final statements are still outstanding in terms of their preparation. And that also is the case with regard to item 7. And as a consequence, because of the fact that the clerk is running a little bit behind on these matters, we do not have the financial statement for the half year to 31st of October either. What is planned is that we will have a short presentation of those numbers, hopefully within 1 week's time, and certainly before the scheduled town council on the 17th. So that brings us on to item 9, where there are a few project items that are either in progress or have been completed. Is this with you, Alexa, or with Jeanette?
I'll kick off.
Okay.
And Jeanette can be ready to catch anything that I don't have the detail on. So we got the town hall roof fixed, and it was done quite quickly once we eventually picked the right contractor and told him the price that he was going to charge us, which is not the first price that he offered. So that's done, which has made us watertight again. However, we do have issues with the boilers. The boilers appear to be okay. However, there's some issue with ventilation. So one of the boilers is currently off. Obviously, you already mentioned in last month's, or in the last meeting's minutes about the ongoing rent review. This is all kind of tied in with the landlord, and we're not really going to be into a situation of having to replace boilers with the visibility that we've got. But fortunately, we can survive on one boiler at the moment because we don't have many people in the building. But it's not an ideal situation. Those boilers are very old, and if one goes, we'll be in a difficult situation. So that's the town hall. I mean, there are also other failing things at the town hall. The stair lift is barely scraping through its services and inspections, but it is being held together. We have a lovely guy that comes and does it. We have issues with the windows. We have issues with the balcony. So these are serious issues with the building that will have to be addressed at some point. But until the issue with the rent review and the landlord is clarified, I don't think we will get anywhere. So Anita was hoping to take that. She did agree in the last meeting to take that to the unitary and see if they could get us moved on to Schedule A rather than Schedule B of their asset review. I don't have an update on that. The allotments, we have increased our allotment capacity. We've cleared another couple of allotments. We have a really big waiting list for allotments. It's become something that's very, very popular. Our allotments have improved quite a lot over the last few years, but they've still got a way to go, and we haven't got anything like the capacity that's needed for the waiting list that we've got, and obviously the other allotments in town that we don't own or manage. I think they've all been given notice. So we've added another couple down there, which is great. And then Malthouse Square, I think perhaps I will give over to Jeanette to say, because we did have some traveller invasion there earlier this year, and this is just an update on the Bund situation. Jeanette, if you could just let us know what's gone on there.
Yeah, as you know, we put in emergency bunds to stop travellers getting back on that site. But we obviously needed a permanent solution. So hopefully you've seen that a permanent bund has been put in place, together also with some drop and locks to allow access for the grass cutters, as an example. So that's been covered with hardcore and topsoil and a mixed seed meadow flowers, which are good for bees. So hopefully that will look really lovely come the spring and grass up.
Okay, thanks very much. And then the other thing which has been ongoing ever since I've been at this council is the replacement of the posts at the War Memorial. And we have finally jumped through all the hoops. We've talked to the conservation officer. We've got various quotes, and we are about to replace I don't know when that's going to happen actually, but we're going to replace them with oak posts and a very similar chain. It's all acceptable to everyone, and it will come in cheaper than we had originally planned. I don't know when that's going to happen, Jeanette. Have you got any idea on that?
I want to say this side of Christmas, the issue is getting hold of green oak, and then we will have a few weeks' notice to get the relevant highways pavement permit and do the necessary work.
Okay, and that's it on that item, I think, Alistair.
Patrick.
Yes, just a query on that. Yes, I noticed that you're saying that we've been driven into having to do a rather expensive post solution than the sort of cheaper metal post that we used around the adjoining lawn area. But presumably Trimlock was the lowest of 3 quotes, was it?
Yes, but the metal posts are not cheaper, they are more expensive actually. So this is a more sustainable solution, more approved by the conservation officer, but also better value for money, and of course reduced maintenance.
So the question was this the lowest of 3 quotations? Because our financial regulations say a expenditure more than £1,000 requires 3 quotations. So I was just interested to know how, because this is still quite a lot of money, I was interested to know how much cheaper this was than the next quotation, for example.
It was a lot cheaper, and it's about half the quote of the original metal post. But on the quotes that we got on this, there was one that was totally ridiculous, one that was quite expensive, and then this was sort of bite your arm off type. We actually went to them several times to say, are you sure this is for oak? And you're not fobbing us off with something else. But they have absolutely convinced us that it is oak. This is a regular supplier that we do use very often, and we actually didn't think that they would be in the game for it, but it's considerably cheaper than the other quotes that we got.
So I noticed with VAT it's about £4,700. I think at our last resources meeting there was an earmarked reserve for the War Memorial of £6,188. So presumably this money is spent out of that, is it?
Yes.
So we still have a little
Patrick,
bit
Patrick, could you put your video on, please? Because it's difficult to chair the meeting and invite people.
Oh, sorry. Oh, sorry. Oh. Could you hear me? Because
We could hear you, but we had
Ah.
we'd lost your beauty.
yeah, I don't know what happened there because it muted itself as well. Yeah. So
Okay. I think
you got a
going back
question?
in time, Patrick, going back in time, we did have a reserve of around £7,500, which goes back to a time earlier than when Alexa was actually on board, because the whole sort of way in which it was approached previously was different.
Well, no, at the last resources meeting, Alexa reported under code 3251 War Memorial earmark funds of 618877. So that would obviously pay for these oak posts and still leave, 1,000 or so for any future maintenance.
That's exactly what that reserve was for. It's why it's there, and you don't have to count VAT because we have VAT registered. So
well, quid's in then.
I think we got to that point. Yeah.
Good.
Anyway.
Good.
Right. So moving on, that takes us on to item 10, the update on ongoing tenders.
Okay. I think this is probably both going to be over to Jeanette. I would say that on the Old Town toilets, we were further ahead than this a while back, but because we were moving towards a design for dementia-friendly toilets with our view to moving towards being a dementia-friendly town. Unfortunately, we got the first design and the pandemic hit, and it was a time to review it in line of different priorities. So we actually have had to undo the first design and redo in view of dementia and potential health crises in the future. But if you've got detailed questions, I don't know if Jeanette wants to talk about where we are in the process with that tender and where I don't think it's actually gone out. I said it was issued, but it's on the verge of being issued.
Yeah, I've got some questions if I could ask them.
Yeah, please do.
Yeah, sorry. The plan of the toilet. I noticed there's 3 disabled toilets and 1 non-disabled, but there's 2 unisex disabled, 1 male disabled, and 1 female non-disabled, which would mean that a disabled woman would be obliged to use a unisex toilet. And I just wondered why that was so. Why we have 2 unisex toilets and why we don't have a unisex, a male and a female disabled toilet, so that disabled people of whatever persuasion can use them. It seems a bit unfair to force a disabled woman to have to use a unisex toilet, knowing that some ladies don't like to use ones that are.
Patrick, I don't know which map you're looking at.
I'm looking at the plan that was issued with the.
Chris, could you put yourself on mute?
Yeah. Oh, I'll try.
I think you need a mask as well.
So in short, for everyone who's listening, the Old Town toilets could do with a serious refurb. And when we looked at that, we wanted to make them dementia friendly. COVID struck, and then we were looking at how to open them again with all these issues with pandemic and keeping flu and those sort of things at bay. We decided that actually while we were at it, we would have what you call superloos, that you have individual toilets for 1 person to go in, okay? And we've got 4, all of them being in effect disabled, as well as dementia friendly. The only one that's slightly restricted is the one on that left-hand corner. So you might be referring to an old drawing that looks identical to what you've seen, bar the fact.
No, I'm referring to the plan that was
yes,
issued.
I meant the plan.
Which was issued with this agenda. So if you're telling me that's the wrong plan, I'm happy to see the right plan. But the plan that was issued shows the female toilet being the one that's furthest into the building, and it doesn't appear to be DDA compliant. Well, it isn't DDA compliant. It's not marked as such either.
Then I haven't seen this plan that you were added to the meeting notes, Patrick, but that was amended, right, as you rightly say, to say actually you should put that label of the ladies' toilet to the bottom left-hand one, so that the issue that you've raised is covered. So a good point. We noticed it and we've changed it on what will be our final plan.
Okay, so well, if you could make sure we could all be issued with it, so we know exactly what's being talked about. Just a couple of questions on it mentions a steel beam to replace the bit of wall at the front that's coming out, but I'm not familiar with the toilet construction there, but there are obviously internal walls coming out, so I don't know if you've had a structural survey to ascertain that they're not structural as well, as there's no provision for any other structural work inside the building. That was one question. The other question was, it refers to the fact of the new internal walls being either breeze block, I presume the designer is quite elderly if he's referring to breeze blocks, because being a rather old-fashioned term, or some sort of partitions. I would certainly say that one needs to ensure the walls are appropriate strength concrete blocks, and bearing in mind that disabled fittings get subjected to quite a lot of weight. You know, one needs to ensure that you've got something proper. And I certainly, having had an experience of building quite a lot of toilets in my time, would suggest you don't use lightweight partitioning, even if you do put extra bracing in it. So that's just a couple of observations.
Yes, thank you for that. And yeah, all valid points. And we haven't gone out to tender yet for it. And those tenderers will come back with the relevant information and how they wish to do it. At the moment, I'm waiting for a response from, I want to say ex-South Bucks District Council on the toilets, so that we can then go out to tender. And your comments are noted, Patrick. Sturdy walls.
Absolutely.
Anyone else got anything they want to add about the design and tender for the Old Town toilets? Okay. Malthouse Square playground replacement. I did look at the documentation for that, but am I right in thinking that, Jackson, you wanted to speak at this point?
Yes, thank you very much, Chairman. Can you all hear me? Great. Well, colleagues, you know, when I joined the town council, one of the reasons I joined was because I have young children and I want to make sure that the town caters and looks after families who have a similar sort of background as I do. And being sort of involved with the school and involved and in touch with many parents, it's very evident that our town has deficits in terms of playgrounds. There isn't a playground in Newtown, there is a playground in Old Town, and there's a playground in Hotspur. But the playground at Malthouse Square, which caters sort of, which sits within Old Town, has, in my view, been dilapidated for quite some time. One only needs to go past the playground in recent days and over the summer to see that it's in need of repair, maintenance, and has been quite badly damaged. So with that regard, I've been working with Alexa and Jeanette, and mainly Jeanette, to understand what the needs are for this town in relation to a playground. We've also spoke to some parents. Jeanette and I make site visits to playgrounds to understand, what kind of equipment is trendy or is well liked by children. And as such, she's put together a tender process, and bids have gone out. That tenders have gone out and bids have come in. My understanding is that, look, we're here to give back to the community. We've just sold a community asset. Given the pandemic has affected many children's upbringing, and the fact that children desperately need somewhere outdoor to play, And, you know, I think it'd be great for the town council to aim to have a playground up, a new playground up and running as soon as possible. Ideally, you know, in time for the summer, or at least, you know, before next winter. My understanding is we have £30,000 ring fenced. The initial idea was to go out and seek external funding. But that, as you know, with COVID, takes time. It takes more resources and work on our staff at the town council, where we have other pressing priorities, such as the neighbourhood plan. So I appeal to you, and I hope that you agree with me, that the committee will look into accessing our capital funds to carry out this project from our end entirely as soon as possible. This is you know, effectively a refurb for the entire playground, and in going into these of utilizing the whole open space that Malthouse Squares offers itself. And I believe that what we have on offer, or what we put out to tender and what has come in, will really transform that open space. But also, I think it will have a profound positive impact on not only young children, but teenagers in our town. So that's all I have to say. I hope you can support this. I hope you can support this through our capital funds. And it's over to Jeanette to give us more details about it.
I just say before Jeanette gives you that detail, that the equipment that is in Malthouse Square has actually been there for 12 years, and it is certainly due to be replaced and to be upgraded. It has actually done a very good job, but the way in which it was constructed clearly does not lend itself to you know, a product that's going to last forever. And in fact, if you go down to Garvin Avenue or to Holtspur, you will see that things have moved on, and that we will also benefit from that next time around at Malthouse. Now, there's two things here. One is funding, and the second is actually having a group of people who have got the interest and time to actually make it happen in a way that satisfies the majority of the residents and the parents of children who are going to you know, participate in this. And I think that, you know, if you know the history of Malthouse Square, there were actually a group of young mothers at the time, including a lady who currently works for me, who got together and who put together a program that involved not only looking at the design, but also the funding aspects. And there was a great deal of interest. Now, we do not really have a problem in funding this, because we do have a good idea that probably the equipment that will go in now will last between 7 and 8 years. And that being the case, the budget that we have been, or the reserve that we've been providing of £10,000 a year is not far short of what we will need going forward. And I think the problem is that we actually got into this provisioning process halfway through this time, whereas next time around, we're going to be in right on day one. So I think that we are actually in a good position to not only sow the seeds for what is going to happen next year, but also what will happen on a planned replenishment and recycle in years to come. So I would not worry too much about the support for the project. I think we just need to get on and do it. And hopefully Jeanette's going to give us some good feedback from the suppliers that we're already talking to.
Can I make one quick point before?
Yeah.
Which is just that by the end of this year, we've actually got 40 grand in that pot, rather than the 30 that Jackson had pointed out, because he's taking the figure off last year's, or he's taking the figure off the provisional year-end accounts, and we've already budgeted to spend that extra 10 in this year. So there's 40,000 already that we have put aside for it.
Okay, Jeanette.
Okay. We went out to tender. You saw the tender documentation, and I'm pleased to say we got 5 substantial tenders back. Okay, that will in effect achieve our target, and there's a pick and mix of what we want. I haven't, with Jackson, gone through that in fine detail because I'm trying to assimilate that to easily compare apples with apples and the way they've broken down that quote. But clearly from what I've seen so far, they're very high quality, reputable bids and local companies, UK companies. So the other thing to note is that we've moved away from wood, so that the longevity will be far greater, the destruction would be far harder to achieve, and will be, you know, a positive benefit to that area in terms of a playground. So what I'm wanting to, so I can't at this moment in time say to you, this is what me and Jackson and other people think are the proposed tenderer, but I'm hoping that I'd be able to do that and share that with you at full council so that we can debate, or that you can debate what you want to do next.
Okay. Does anyone have any questions? I think, Chris, you were looking to say something earlier.
Well, I was just going to say to Jackson that there is a playground in the new town, which is at Garvin Avenue. That was all.
Okay. Alex?
Yes, I'd like to mirror Jackson's words. Thank you very much, Jackson. I completely agree with you. And having brought 4 children up at that particular play park, and I know your children go there a lot as well now, it is a very popular playground and is well overdue a revamp. And I'm very excited to see this moving forward after so many years of trying to get things established. It has reached its limit now, in all honesty. I have been involved with the maintenance side of it a little bit, and we are keeping it together, but some bits of equipment we've had to decommission, sadly. So it's certainly due its replacement now, and I certainly fully support it. Fantastic.
Okay, well, I'm sure that we will be moving forward with this as quickly as possible, and as soon as we've got a definite proposal to put on the table, then we'll proceed with it. Okay, item 11 is an update on certificates of lawfulness relative to the drinking fountain and the proposal for a commemorative statue around the area of the War Memorial. And I should mention that as far as the latter is concerned, whilst I don't have a direct interest in this, my partner was selected as the person to actually design the statue at a point when funding is available. And as I understand it, that is ongoing. So, Alexa?
Okay, yeah, it's just a quickie. So the Water Fountain Group do want and need me to do a certificate of lawfulness. I am still in the position of not being able to do it, even though we've had a fair amount of back and forth with Buckinghamshire Council. They still haven't actually issued us with a license, which I believe they're going to, is how they're doing it. What I need is permission from the landowner to do this thing, and they are doing it by way of a license. Peter Sanders has been very responsive on this each time they've asked for information. We think we've supplied all the information to them, but although we have chased, there isn't any update on that yet. So I hope that soon there will be, and as soon as there is, I will put in that certificate of lawfulness. It has changed slightly, the design, because of Corona. So it's not going to be quite the drinking fountain that it was. It's more of a bottle filling station that is corona safe. So that's a slight change. And then the other one, which was the certificate of lawfulness that I put in for the commemorative piece of art, has been approved by Bucks Council.
Okay, thank you. Item 12, funding applications.
Sorry, Chairman. Oops. It was just
we keep losing, Patrick, we keep losing.
Yeah, I know. It keeps going off.
Okay, I just want to say to you, I can't know when you're going to speak. If
no, is when I've been using the raise hand function, but nobody seems to be monitoring it. So
no, well,
I mean, is nobody monitoring? Is somebody monitoring chat? Is Alexa monitoring it, or the chairman, or
just
whoever?
opened the chat window. I can monitor the chat. I'll try and do that. I have a lot going on here.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, so there was just a quick question on the war memorial statue. In the application that Alexa did, it refers to a plaque on the plinth or the statue, but nowhere does it say what is on this plaque, and I just wondered what it actually is supposed to say.
I don't think we're at that stage. I was just doing a certificate of lawfulness for the concept to know if it was lawful to put a commemorative work of art there. I gave them the artist's impression in situ. I gave them a drawing. I mean, it's the same. It's the same on the one for the drinking fountain. That's going to have a plaque, but yeah. I don't believe
it was just a question. It was just a question.
On the plaque.
It was just a question because the war memorial obviously is a war memorial in respect of the people who died in the war. This is another celebratory or commemorative thing. And I'm just unclear what it's celebrating if we don't know what's on the plaque. Have we not decided what it's commemorating yet?
Can I ask Jeanette? I mean, it's not a matter for this committee particularly, but Jeanette, you do all the minutes and everything for the World War II committee, which has become the kind of World War committee, with our various things being cancelled and ongoing and not being able to finish some of these projects. Would you be able to help Patrick with that problem?
I don't think that we decided what the wording on the plaque is. So like Alexa said, there is going to be space for that plaque, and what's on it is yet to be decided, I suppose, is the short answer.
Do we not know what it is commemorating then? I mean, I mean, obviously, if one wants to try and promote this piece of art and get some funding or more funding for it, one needs to know what it's commemorating. And if you don't know what it's commemorating, I mean, I seem to remember when this was first mooted, it was going to be commemorating a female munitions worker, which I presume was to tie in with the centenary of the Women's Institute, which came to this country in 1918 and had its centenary in 2018. We're now in 2020. The design has changed, and I'm just questioning what is it commemorating. And it seems to me it seems to be a fairly simple question.
Okay, I think the answer to your question is that it was an item that was coming out of the World War I centenary celebration. And the commemorative statue was twofold: A, to mark the 100-year point after the end of the First World War, and secondly, to make the connection between the actual world and the role that was played by Beaconsfield people, specifically the munitions factory, which is on the site, or was on the site of where Alex Dunlop's business is today. And the actual wording, I'm sure, has not been set in stone, if you pardon the pun. But I mean, at the end of the day, it is a commemorative statue relative to the First World War and the part played by this town.
But that's what the War Memorial is for.
Well, we're not here to debate the whys and wherefores. The actual committee that was the World War I Commemorative Committee obviously considered the notion at the time that they were a group, and that was a decision and a proposal that they made. Now, subsequently, because of the events of this year, there hasn't been an awful lot of traction. And as a consequence, we are not much further forward, other than the fact that the town clerk applied for a certificate of lawfulness, which I think you were aware of, which subsequently was approved. Now, until such time as there is funding in place via that World War I and subsequently World War II committees, I'm not sure that any of us here can answer the question.
I would agree with what Alistair said in terms of what we understand that statute to be, and the final wording is too early, Patrick.
Yeah, I would just say that I haven't seen, and I know a number of people who are in a position to have a better view on it, that there is actually no evidence of there ever being a munitions factory on the site of Dunlop's garage. And if you have documentary evidence, I would love to see it, but I would hate to think that Beaconsfield might embarrass itself by celebrating something that is nothing more than a rumor or you know, wherever this idea came from. That I've got nothing more to say on it, really.
Good. Let's move on then to item 12 and hear about the successful funding bid for the neighbourhood plan. Sorry.
Okay. Yeah, I think that's again back to Jeanette on what she's done there.
So the neighbourhood plan process has just started, and as part of that, we applied to locality for funding. There are a couple of funding opportunities, the first tranche being 10 grand, and we applied and were granted funding just under 6k that would take us up to the end of the financial year, and we've been successful in awarding that, so we have cracked on and started that. We've also got the steering group in place, and the county, the unitary has confirmed the parish boundary as our neighbourhood boundary area as well.
Okay. Anyone anything to add on the neighbourhood plan? No? Proposal for community garden project. I believe this came as a suggestion from Open Spaces, probably in 2019. Is this again Jeanette who's going to comment?
Yes, it is. Jeanette, I could try and put up some of the photos if that would.
They're very good.
If you could put up the pretty layout drawing.
Yeah, let me see if I can do a screen share then. Ooh.
That's
here.
So that's file 003 for community garden project, if you're trying to find the right one.
Does that help?
Yeah, just go to the second sheet. That's it. If you just make that one bigger as you can, and that's all we really need, I think. Yeah, that's great. So I think I'm not sure when this project started as a concept, but it did go to open spaces. And we were fortunate enough in some conversations that I had to stumble across Sarah, who is a landscape architect student, and she very kindly did this piece of work for us. So there are 2 plots that are in perhaps a shady location on the allotments that we can turn into something that's accessible to all ages and disabilities. And as the drawing shows, that you can reverse in a minibus, and for people to access and walk around, either to look and enjoy or actually to garden with all disabilities and abilities. And it will be a great community project. And what we are wanting to do, and you've got these drawings and other supporting documentation, what we are wanting to do is to put a bid into the Bucks Community Board for 50% funding of this project, with the other half being funded by the town council. Now, this type of project ticks a lot of boxes in terms of social isolation, inclusion, well-being, getting in touch with nature, and a place to engage with other people on the outdoors, different age groups and the like. Any questions?
Patrick?
Yes, I wasn't quite sure whereabouts in the Ivans Road allotments this is. You said the shady bit, but where exactly is that?
The minute you come through the gate, it's immediately on your right-hand side.
Right. So that this minibus has to reverse down the little access way past the houses.
No, it would drive in, front nose first, and then reverse into that bay.
So it takes quite a large piece of, and these allotments, that bearing in mind that Alexa was saying there's this huge demand for allotments, that this piece of the allotments is of no use, that we need to turn it into a garden.
I wouldn't say it's of no use. If you're a keen gardener, you would, and you were growing fruit and veg, you would avoid shady areas. Yeah, so that would be less attractive to someone who was purely into their allotment generating the biggest crop.
No, I was just surprised. Having been on open spaces, that this would see. You know, I don't remember this ever being discussed. Perhaps I was asleep, but it just seems that, you know, I respect the idea, and it all looks very clever. I just wondered whether Ivans Road allotments was the best place for it, bearing in mind the town council does have access to other land assets. You know, because this isn't really the most accessible place in the town.
Okay.
Thanks, sir.
There was a reason for it. It's actually come up in open spaces a lot. It's come up in community and safety as well. It also ticks an awful lot of other boxes for the community board, with community growing being a big, well, it's the first thing in the community board priority document. It's on their list of priorities. Community growing was right up there. What this does is, it, as well as just doing the project, it provides an ongoing venue for where you can facilitate further community projects in teaching community growing, or there's a huge been a huge upsurge in the last year in growing your own fruit and vegetables, making your own sustainability project at home. It's a way of engaging with school children and with older people. It's likely that we would work in the future with Chiltern Rangers, who we already work with anyway. They have huge access to, they work with both the Beaconsfield secondary schools, and they do growing and gardening projects with them. Now, once you take these into combine that with their other volunteering opportunities, you can start to build a real community offering. And it will also boost the allotments that we have currently. We've never been able to establish an allotment community or self-governing body as such. And this could stimulate all sorts of things that we have there, which is why we would like it to be at the allotments. I don't think it's necessarily appropriate somewhere else, but if it's a good model, we could repeat it on other pieces of land.
And I just want to add that also those people on the waiting list, instead of just dealing with 2 and giving them an allotment, all those people on the waiting list can join in and get involved in that allotment area while other allotments come forward and are freed up, because we're clearing more space, by the way, at the end of our allotments for more plots.
Yeah, just 2 questions. One was on the plan there, it says Hotspur Bank. Is this a through route? Are people going to be encouraged to walk through this or do they have to walk through it to get to other allotments?
No.
No. Okay.
No. At the top end, they're actually half a plot. So in effect, we split the plots into 2, and that's the top end of a half plot. So there are allotment holders who share. You'd have to go and have a look. We share the bottom end of it.
Yeah.
So you go in, you walk into that area, and it's always been quite redundant because of the shade area of it. But it's half an allotment, half a plot in effect, after we split the plots about 2 years ago.
And the other thing was that Jeanette mentioned the community board. There was a proposal at the community board just over a week ago by Chiltern Rangers for a whole range of projects. And I can't remember, but one of the projects was subject to financing by Beaconsfield Town Council. Now that wouldn't be the other half of this project, would it, Jeanette? Or so whatever that was, there must be a request in connection to that for Beaconsfield Town Council as well.
I didn't see the Chiltern Rangers bid that they put forward for the community board, but I know that this isn't part of their bid.
No. Okay. So there's 2 separate things going on here then. Okay. Thank you, Jeanette.
Patrick, were you at the community board?
I was, yes.
Okay.
Yes. And as I say, Chiltern Rangers put in this submission, which had, I don't know, like 12 projects. And the very last one, it said this one is subject to match funding from Beaconsfield Town Council.
So you could actually find out a little bit more about that, presumably from your notes.
Well, yes, I could obviously look at the agenda pack that was sent out for the community board.
Well, I think it would be useful to have that feedback.
Yeah.
Okay. Jeanette, did you want to add?
No, Alexa.
No, I was going to say that it would be very likely in the future that we would, we do talk to Chiltern Rangers a lot. They do run projects in Beaconsfield, and there would be every reason why we would continue to work with them as a partner in the future. And also bear in mind that match funding doesn't have to be in cash.
Doesn't have to be?
In cash.
Right, okay. So I note that you've actually got the balance of the project coming up in item 13 under requests for expenditure. And it sort of occurs to me as to which way round do we want to play this? Are we saying that we're going to go to the community board with a proposal? And if it's successful, are we then going to add the matched funding? Is that what we agree or wish to do? Or are we going to sit on the fence and wait and see what happens before making that decision?
I would say that given how closely this matches the community board's priorities on, it ticks so many of their boxes, I would think we're in with a very, very good chance of securing match funding for this. Coincidentally, it's a project that I think would be a great enhancement and a great offering to the community anyway, but we'd have to look at that as a funding request if we didn't get the match funding from from Buckinghamshire.
Okay. Chris and Alex, you're both members of this committee. What are your views?
Sorry. Yes, very much in agreement. I think it's a great project, and I agree to it.
Okay.
I'd like to see it progress.
I mean, my only concern would be if it's by the allotments. You know, would it attract people there, and would the allotment holders suffer with loss of produce? I mean, I don't know if that would be an issue.
No, I really doubt that. It's quite up into it.
Is the access from Ivans Road? Is that where the access is from?
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, yeah.
You come up and then you turn immediately right. It's the
Yeah,
first
yeah,
area
I
on the
thought,
right-hand
yeah.
side.
Okay.
Great project.
Sandy, I know you're not a member of this committee, but do you have an opinion on this?
No, I think bearing in mind the shady area of this area of allotments, it would probably be a good use of the ground, and bearing in mind that it can grow product as well, which is on a selective basis. So anything that enhances the leisure facilities of that area of the town, I think would be, I would certainly like to encourage it.
Okay. Jackson, do you have anything to say?
Thank you. I'm very supportive of this. I think anything to get residents out and about, growing their own stuff, learning about nature, and coming together outdoors, has my support.
Okay. All right. So, I mean, basically, I'll come back to you in a moment, Alexa. Basically, we're looking at is a spend of around 17,000, of which 50% we would be applying to the community board for. So in the event that that was successful, we would be looking to match fund that to the tune of 8.5. So from what I'm hearing, there is sort of generally good support for that. Alexa?
It's only to say that currently the allotments are not accessible really in any way. And one of the aspects of this project would be to make the area would be wheelchair accessible. It's to do with some complicated, I don't know, membrane or something that they put down, which actually has stuff growing through it, but you can also be wheelchair accessible. Just want to make that point.
Okay. All right. Well, let's leave it with you and Jeanette to actually make the application to the community board, and we'll await with interest the result of that.
Chairman, can I just mention what I found? What this thing that was raised by Chiltern Rangers at the community board.
Excellent.
It's part
Well
of it's part of a range of projects that they're doing to encourage young people and so on to get involved in conservation. But it's just described as Beaconsfield Town Council, Walkwood and Hotspur Bank, £1,100 to be match funded by the town council. But I presume that Chiltern Rangers would have notified Alexa that they hope to include the town council in part of their project, but that's what they've submitted to the community board.
Okay, Alexa, do you know about it?
I don't know specifically about this, but Chiltern Rangers work on our sites regularly throughout each year, every year. They undertake work for us at the Hotspur Bank Nature Reserve and at Walkwood, and these are all regular, these are maintenance items that I would have to pay a commercial company to deal with for us. They chip the laurel, they deal with pest products and things like that. So but how they achieve that is that they come to me and they give me a quote for clearing the laurel, for example, and I pay them to do that because I'd have to pay a tree contractor or someone to do it. How they actually work is that they are a social enterprise, and they achieve the work, whether it's at Hotspur or Walkwood or wherever it is, by engaging school children or volunteers or people who suffer from social isolation, mental health issues. They have a really good record of reaching hard to reach members of the community. So their business model is such that they see it as they're coming to us to fund them to do something. From my point of view, I'm paying to have a piece of work done. It's a win-win situation.
Okay, it sounds like we've got a little bit more clarity there, but maybe there is still more to be.
Yeah, in their report, they say they are applying for that funding, but
okay.
by all it sounds as if they haven't applied to Alexa.
Okay, so all we can do, Patrick, is to try and find out a little bit more about it. But thank you for bringing it up. Jeanette?
Yeah, just in summary, Patrick, you've cleared up that their bid to the community board did not include the community garden that we're talking about now, yeah?
Sure.
No.
Completely different thing. Completely different.
Completely different.
Okay, let's move on to item 13 and specifically, good evening, Clive. Specifically under item 13, I think we can go to the item about road traffic speed reductions. There have been, I think, 3 separate areas of the town that have been mentioned recently, and 2 of them by residents and 1 by town council. Should we start with the residents, Alexa? I think maybe the Windsor End and also Maxwell Road.
Yes. So Windsor End, we have had an application from someone who's asked us to look at bringing the speed limit down. I, of course, said that's a Bucks issue, and he said, I've spoken to Bucks and they've told me to come to you. So, and people do whiz down Windsor End, and I think he's actually at Hedgley Lane. It's a 60-mile-an-hour speed limit down there. It's left over from when that was a through road, a main road, many years ago. It's not anymore. It's a country lane. It's a dead end. In the last year, we've had 2 serious accidents down there, not necessarily because of the speed limit, I will admit, but we have had a fatality and we had another road accident that could have been a lot worse. But there's also quite a lot of maintenance down there that we are not able to do under our devolved contract, because under that contract we are only able to do the maintenance up to 40 miles an hour. So anything that's over that, we have to go back to Transport for Bucks and say you have to get on with that. So that Windsor End, Hedgley Lane area has been an issue for a while. Another area which we get a lot of discussion from, and we haven't been able to move this forward, is outside St Mary's School. Now, one of the problems there is there's simply a lot of traffic and parked cars, and it's a busy time in the mornings, and they've lost their crossing person, and Bucks haven't put the crossing person back, and it's all become a bit of a problem. Now, it's already a 30-mile-an-hour limit on that road, so technically you can't, that's the lowest speed limit that we've got, but we could look at asking for a 20-mile-an-hour zone in the school area and the necessary signage and measures to bring that down, and hope that could alleviate the problems that we get, because we do get an awful lot of correspondence on that. So I think if I stop there for a minute and you can see what people think about that.
Okay, shall we put the third one in the equation now and then consider package.
Okay. The third area, which again I've heard about for ever since I've been at this council, is the whole area between Wickham End and the Hawkesbury roundabout. That area has changed considerably over a number of years. There is additional residential housing going on to the road. There will be further changes. And also it's been pointed out that, I mean, I think it was pointed out to me that it's they make it very obvious if you're on the speed awareness course. I'm sure none of you are aware of that course at all, and me never. That as soon as you see activity, driveways, roads, and most importantly street lights, you are taught on that course it's a 30-mile-an-hour zone. But for some reason that stretch of road, which has quite a lot of activity on it, is a 50-mile-an-hour zone, and it's something that has been mooted for a long time. I think there are several people on this call who have talked about that for a number of years. So that's the other area.
Alex?
And also there are quite regularly, unfortunately, sadly, accidents outside the junction with the garden centre, which turns into Wattleton Road where the schools are. That is a travesty of a junction, and for some reason there regularly are accidents, and I know this because I go home there every night, and it occurs. There needs to be some change in the speed limit down that road or something, and especially with further developments carrying on down there, I think it would be a very wise move.
Okay, Chris. Chris, you're muted.
I would like to add High March to it as well, because let that end of Leber Lane and Sandswood End, that could be a school zone at 20. Same as St Mary's, I think that we should bring in school zones, and that's one we should definitely do.
Yeah. Okay, let me just tell you that this process of requesting road traffic speed reductions is not straightforward, and it involves a certain amount of expenditure without the necessity that one would be successful in trying to achieve what we were trying to achieve. To give you a clue, an application starts with what is basically a discussion and consideration to whether or not an area might be suitable for a potential speed reduction. And that has a cost of just under £900 for that application. If you get past that point, then you would almost certainly be subject to what's called a speed limit appraisal tool, and the remaining part of the administrative process and the changes that are required would probably incur costs of up to £10,000 per speed reduction. Now, whether or not we might be able to achieve some economy of scale with all of this is not immediately clear. But I do think that we need to try, and I don't know that we would necessarily say that any of these areas are a priority over another area. Clearly, speed in relationship to school areas is critical, and also where you've got a road like Windsor End that has a mixed speed limit varying from 30 at one end to 60 at the other end, and a turning into Hedgley Lane where the pavement is probably less than 2 meters. The argument that it is dangerous for pedestrians walking towards Windsor End from Hedgley Lane would seem to be quite a solid argument. Equally, we've got more and more people now coming from the Four Ends roundabout and launching their vehicles down the hill towards the garden centre, with speeds probably approaching 60 before even getting anywhere near the garage. So, you know, all of these things are very concerning. And I think that, you know, we should at least engage with one of our unitary councillors. And I know that Anita has been mentioned because of the portfolio that she is responsible for. But I think we should start the process of trying to go to the next stage of finding out what the chances are with any of these particular proposals. And I think if it's going to cost us £1,000 per area as a look-see, then this is something that we ought to be prepared to consider.
Yeah.
And I have some views on this.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. I think that we should actually, as a council, actually also just say, okay, this is our policy. We want an area around schools to be 20 miles an hour, and we want other roads like Hedgley Road to become I would have thought 30 mile an hour is perfectly fine for that. I mean, you wouldn't even want to even think of 40 for that, but that should be a 30, and then decide on what we think is a safe speed limit, knowing the area that as we do as local councillors, from the Beaconsfield round to Hotspur, as to whether we think that should be a 40 or that should be a 30. I'm guessing that if we got it down to 40, we'd be doing well. But I think if we actually had a collective view as a town council, what we actually want to do, and then we've got that in what we want to do, and then we try and make it happen, rather than sort of do it a bit of wishy-washy way, and as possibly done in the past. If we actually have a focus on, okay, these three points, these three areas, this is what we want to see done, and we start doing the stages to actually make that happen. And at some point along the line, hopefully someone else will come on board to help us. I'm sure a public petition or even an online petition would get good response. I'm sure that would help towards the road speeds being lowered, because at the end of the day, we're not talking about any rocket science here. We're talking about common sense here. I mean, that road, 60 miles an hour. I mean, what the hell? It's just crazy. And the bits around schools, most schools nowadays have got 20 mile an hour zones around them. So that should be a tick box, I would have thought, for that sort of thing, especially for Maxwell Road. It's another way which people zap in and out of the town. That would make perfect sense to do that. And if you're doing one school, as you quite rightly said, you might as well do all of the other ones, the one in Hotspur as well, and just have it as a council policy that around schools, it's a 20-mile zone.
Okay, thank you. Alex?
Mr. Chairman, was it that the £900 was the initial cost to put in the preliminary application?
Yeah.
And that's for each change of
yes.
road speed. Is your question, would we agree to fund that initially?
Well, I think the question is, are we supportive of spending the sort of initial upfront money?
Well, I certainly am. I think very much so. I think it'd be good to see the council doing that, and I think it's the right thing to do. And then we can progress from there. But we won't do anything until we initially do that. I think it's a good spend of money.
Okay, Chris, you're muted.
Oh yeah,
No, you're still muted.
yeah. No, I think that definitely all the schools, including the high school and the Beaconsfield school, could do the 20. Because people in the 30, they'll drive 40. People hopefully in the 20 will come down. But no, I definitely think that we should drop the speeds.
Patrick?
Yes, I agree that we should have a uniform policy about speed limits around the school, and we should promote that in Beaconsfield. Maxwell Road, as has been said, has been an issue there for a long time. I think there's something like only 4 schools in the whole of Buckinghamshire that haven't got a crossing guard. I don't know why Maxwell Road has struggled so long. I mean, there's one school has 2 crossing guards. You know, obviously High March seems to have a rota of crossing guards. Maxwell Road seems to struggle to recruit anybody, which is interesting because, you know, they do have an active Parent Teachers Association that keeps complaining. But they have been asking for pedestrian crossing, but I think one of the problems is people come from all directions to that school, so getting them to all channel themselves into one pedestrian crossing zone isn't right. But obviously, if one slows the traffic down, one does actually make the whole situation better for people trying to get to the school. I think the crossing idea came up recently, but I believe it got a knockback on the basis that, as we know, these crossings, you know, seem to get budgeted at about £70,000, which makes them a bit of a non-starter. On the question of crossings, of course, we've had lots of discussions in the past about down by the Harvester. And of course, the problem there with any sort of crossing is you're in a 50-mile-an-hour zone, you can't have one. I've thought for a very long time it would be good if we could have a 30-mile-an-hour limit across the town, the same as effectively you do on the A40 going through Gerrard's Cross. And that would obviously go from the top of Whitehill all the way through to the Old Town. As has been mentioned, we're expecting a development along that road. I saw some statistics the other day that show, I mean, Alex mentioned the turning by the garden centre, but actually I think in terms of accidents, it's actually the junction with Berks Road has got the most incidents, and it's something like the 4th most prolific location for minor accidents. And it isn't easy coming out of any of those side roads, and people do tend to hurtle along that road. And if, again, the town was properly marked and there were 30-mile-an-hour signs as you came into the town, and you do come into the town at the Hotspur roundabout, I think it would be a good thing. In terms of, you were talking about a strategy is the community board does have, you know, a traffic subgroup, and there is Transport for Bucks funding. I mean, if we had a number of sites that we felt we had a good case for, we could bundle them up and seek match funding from the community board, you know, to stump up the £450 towards the £900 per location.
Okay, that's useful. Jackson, do you have anything to add?
No, I'm supportive of it. Thank you.
Okay, Sandy?
I'm also very supportive of it, not least the fact that in the parish appraisal that was written in 2009, there was a strong recommendation there for the road between Whitehill, the top of Whitehill, and Wickham End to be downrated to 30 miles an hour. There was also a point made in a recommendation that we should have a zebra crossing in order to facilitate people crossing from a smaller Hotspur at the time, from the then Harvester, or the King's Head actually as it was then, to the other side, the south side of the road. So I'm extremely supportive of all these efforts to reduce the speed limit, particularly around the schools.
Okay, well, I think we've given the subject a good airing, and I think we've got a fairly clear indication as to where we will get support. So I think I will discuss it further with the town clerk and decide on the next step. But we will also take into account Patrick's comments, which were quite useful. Thank you. Right, let's move on to item 14, an update from the clerk on boundary disputes and encroachment.
Ah, yes. Okay. So I think one of the very public ones that has been ongoing has been Seeley's Walk, where we did get a lot of complaints about someone having put up a fence, and it has finally gone. I think that it was the owner who took it down themselves, but there certainly has been a lot of influence from Buckinghamshire to have that removed. There is ongoing work still with the property that I think is next door, who had moved their fence quite some years ago, and it hadn't actually been noticed in the same way as the more recent one, and work on that one is ongoing. Another area where we have had some problems lately is not huge problems, but around the Hotspur Park area, where there are quite a lot of, I mean, we have problems in all areas where housing backs onto our land. And often these are wooded areas, or there's scrub or shrubs there, which is why we have to keep an eye on what goes on, because otherwise when people start to cut away at shrubbery, it's often an advance warning of encroachment. So we do monitor that all over the town. However, what's happened recently is there's been some discussion about the houses which back onto Hotspur Park, and there is a lot of scrub and brush and bramble, and it turns out that it may well have been a hedge in about 1950. And it's not a hedge now. And I think I may have upset some of the residents because I've sent out the original deeds where that land was gifted to Beaconsfield Town Council, and so I've made clear where the boundary is. However, it is now being disputed by a number of residents, so I'm going to have to undertake some further work there to establish exactly where the boundary is. I mean, it's not really a dispute, it's a misunderstanding, and once we work out where it is, and I'm talking to all the residents at the moment, we'll just make it plain and everyone will know where it is and whether, but there are fences now, and as I say, there isn't a hedge that was there in 1950, so it's a bit confusing.
Okay, thank you. Anyone, any comments on that? No? Okay, thank you. And one other item under agenda item 14 is that I gather there has been a request to purchase some land. Would you like to tell us about that?
Yes, I've had 2 emails, interestingly. I sent you one, and then Jackson sent me a further one this afternoon, which may be from the same person, but it's got a different name on it. But it's to do with a parcel of land which is town council land in Candlemas Lane. It's a little green parcel at the end. It's at the corner of the road, and it has like little white bollards and there's a little footpath across it. It's not an enormous area, and someone has written to us very nicely, having identified us as the landowner, and said they've got, you know, an architect ready to go and they'd love to build a house on it, and would you sell it to them, please?
Don't all rush to speak at once.
Well, I'm guessing that it's there because of the fact that it's on a junction. So if you built something on it, you'd obscure the junction and cause a problem there. So I wouldn't have thought that they would actually be able to build anything very big on it. And I would have thought the grief that we'd get for selling that little bit of land would probably be worse than actually money coming from it.
Okay. Patrick?
Is this the piece of land where we had some travellers a couple of years or so ago, and we put some bollards up?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's that piece of land, yeah. Well, yes, I don't think anybody would be very pleased if we sold that off to be built on. And I don't think it was a very big piece of land either, actually, was it? I mean, I suppose you'd get one house on there, but it wouldn't be particularly brilliant. No, I think you might get quite a lot of pushback from the residents there.
Yeah, it'd be a lovely place for a wheel garden or something like that, but that's about it.
I think it would.
There's also electricity substation there, so that basically could run a thing to that. But yeah, I mean, I think it's the sort of thing, if you asked everyone in the town to vote for it, then most people would say they didn't want to sell it, I would have thought, because what are you going to do with the money? Yeah. it would be worth a few bob, but and you could get a reasonable sized house on there, but I don't think anybody would. I don't know. I don't think people want to sell it, but maybe we ask.
We might need them to build a new office for the town council.
Well, on the basis Jackson's on the phone to his estate agent now. Sandy, do you have a view?
Yes, I do actually. I would be very against it. I think it would spoil the street scene. I think it would make more oppressive. It's the one opposite the duck pond, diagonally opposite the duck pond.
Yes.
And where that green space is now gives you a more open feeling. And if you put a house on it or any structure, I think it would be detrimental to the whole neighbourhood. So I would not be in favour of it at all.
There you go.
There's a picture of it for you.
Yeah.
Well done, Clive.
Thank you.
Okay, I think we've got the answer on that one. So I will leave it to the town clerk to deal with the administration.
If it's 20 million, we'll accept.
Okay. Right, that brings us to item 15, and I don't think we have at the moment a date for a new meeting. So I'm going to thank any members of the public who have attended this evening and bring part one to a close. And I suggest that we reconvene in 2 or 3 minutes and take part two agenda. Thank you.